And you have, as many of your fellow Democrats, have used some heated rhetoric against the president. And do you think twice about that when something like this happens?
What rhetoric do you have in mind?
Just talk.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, "No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core." Let that sink in, and don't be a damn bit afraid of saying it, because that's exactly who he is.
The debate now among Democrats is, how do you answer the following question? Is Donald Trump an existential threat to democracy in his second term? Or is Donald Trump's second term, oh, a fly on me, is Donald Trump's second term bad, but like his first term, survivable if we just wait it out, right? And I just want you to know from your senator, as someone who sits in that room on your behalf, I am in camp number one. He is an existential threat to democracy.
The permission structure for violence. You've got polls about political violence. Democrats don't think it's a good idea. Only Republicans. Only people inclined to consume conservative media are now, I think, upward of 50% say that if necessary, violence is okay. You've only got the conduct on one of the two sides.
The threat right now in this country to the American people are extreme MAGA Republicans. That's the threat. That's the problem. That's the crisis that we confront. Extreme MAGA Republicans.
This is simply the most destructive and damaging individual in my lifetime.
You saw in the opening monologue that the leadership on the left, specifically the progressive left, have been raising the temperature with every one of their gullible followers, so that now we have the third attempt and a full manifesto on Cole Allen, the person that stormed the security at the White House Correspondents Dinner last night and took a run at Donald Trump, JD Vance, and his cabinet. This gentleman, though, doesn't quite fit the perfect picture of the patsy. But it's interesting nonetheless, and there's a few points that the media is just not willing to report on. We're going to. Let me walk you through. So it's now just coming out that Cole Allen, he was trying to go after Trump and his cabinet. It's not a guess. He mentions it in his manifesto. The media and other attendees, though, there were some very high-profile attendees, were not his target at all. And he said that as well. He echoed, and this is the key piece of this, many of the standard left-wing anti-GOP hate rhetoric that you would hear all over this typical captured fake news media and the digital media. He was shocked also at the lack of security at the Hilton. He was a guest at the same hotel. He checked in a couple days before this White House Correspondents Dinner. So as I said here, Cole Allen, he came from a good family. He received every advantage. I agree with this post. He has multiple degrees and all of his standardized testing is off the charts. He was a very smart person, but he was radicalized by the hyperbolic Democrats that you saw in the opening clip. The Democrats always sit here and play this game that, oh, we didn't do this. And every time there's something tragic or terrible, something like we saw last night, they back away from their statements. But the internet remembers. We know what they say to their followers in front of the television cameras, and we've captured it all. And you saw just a slice of that, again, in the opening montage. So this person, Cole Allen, he has a very good family. No broken background or anything that we can get at. He was the teacher of the month at the high school that he was an employee at. So again, it's not fully adding up why we're seeing this. But then we see a peek into his planning and forethought that he put in to this run on Donald Trump, JD Vance, and the cabinet members that were in attendance last evening. Let's have a look at some of the planning that he took and played to his advantage.
This guy clearly seemed like he wanted to, the reporting is that he wanted to get to Trump officials. Did that include the president as well? It would seem to make sense that if the reporting's accurate. I just talked to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche about this, and he gave us that tidbit about the suspect traveling across the country by train.
Right.
So that we start to back that up, because that obviously takes planning. We've all talked about, you don't just get a room at the Washington Hilton the weekend at the White House Correspondents Dinner. You plan that months in advance to get a room. So if this is indeed the guy, the shooter that we think it is, he's been planning this for months, and then taking a train to travel undetected.
Right.
Did he have weapons with him? Because we all take the Acela a lot, or the Amtrak trains here. It's not the level. There aren't mags to get on those trains. It's not the same level.
No one's
of
checking your
screening.
luggage.
Yeah.
So again, this gentleman, and if I didn't mention it earlier, I will now. He was from Torrance, California, out on the West Coast, and he took a scattering hodgepodge of trains across the country. Clearly, he's trying to avoid security as he's bringing things with him. I disagree with Shannon Bream here because there's no other explanation. He also booked his room at the Hilton, where the Correspondents' Dinner was being held, weeks, if not months, in advance. And now we have a peek into his manifesto. It was first publicized by the New York Post earlier this afternoon. I'm going to give you the highlights because, again, it's important to follow where this intelligent but impressionable progressive leftist that did this, he was fully impressionable and took many of the left-wing talking points and published them in his manifesto. So he was a 31-year-old California school teacher who described himself as half black and half white. Again, highlights from the manifesto. It was about a 1,000-word document, and he sent it to his family members just 10 minutes before the attack at the Hilton. He targeted specifically Trump administration officials by rank and explicitly, and this is curious, excluded Kash Patel. No explanation as to why, but again, going down the cascade by rank of Trump officials, with obviously Donald Trump on top, but explicitly leaving out Kash is curious. He intentionally used buckshot because he wanted to minimize collateral damage in a highly trafficked hotel lobby or, ballroom. He described the Secret Service as actually insane and said that he walked in and out with multiple weapons throughout the preceding days, totally undetected. This is a complete security breakdown. And then he goes on to say that if I was an Iranian agent instead of an American citizen, I could have brought this weapon and, I'll make it YouTube safe in here and nobody would have noticed. That's how lackadaisical going into this event the preceding days were. And it reminds you of other events where we had lackadaisical security and screening. He ended his manifesto with this line: "It's awful. I want to throw up. I can't really recommend it. Stay in school, kids." So he knew what he was going to do. He'd planned it for weeks, if not months. He was targeting Trump officials by rank, but excluded Kash Patel. And again, he wanted to minimize collateral damage. But he was also very active on Blue Sky, which is a leftist kind of version of Twitter. And in his posts, he wasn't as delicate in his history of his posts. In one post, he calls President Trump the Antichrist. In another, he recommends buying guns in a reaction to Trump's Department of Justice ruling and wanted to explore ways to get through firearm bans that specifically went against some of these groups. Again, I'm going to make this YouTube safe, that the DOJ ruling had as an exclusion. In one of his posts, he called Donald Trump a sociopathic mob boss, and he referred to him as a traitor with known connections to Putin. So again, the Russia narrative is bleeding through with this person. He also attacked JD Vance in posts on Blue Sky for advocating an end to America's funding the war in Ukraine, and also had specific criticisms, and these have just been in the last 2 weeks, for JD Vance criticizing the Pope. So again, this is all going lockstep with what the leftist media has been saying against JD and the Pope, or Donald Trump, or the war in Ukraine, etc. He was lockstep with their talking points. So the last thing that I want to talk through is just how important this is, because Donald Trump actually made mention of this earlier this morning as he was getting an interview, again, just about 10 a.m. this morning on Fox News, specifically talking about the hatred that this person had for a specific group of people, Americans, that have been targeted a lot.
What's the latest that you've learned, Mr. President, about this alleged shooter's motive? Do you know how long he was planning this for?
Well, they have some pretty good information. He had a lot of hatred in his heart for quite a while. And he just, I don't know, it was a religious thing. It was strongly anti-Christian. And I don't know if you've gotten it, just got released, the Manifesto. He said a Manifesto, can you believe it? And so he's got some big problems with the rest of his life. But it's very, very bad situation. But his family knew that he had difficulty, and his family seemed to be, I think they spent a lot of time with his family. His family said he had big difficulty. Maybe they should have reported him a little bit more strongly, probably.
So I'll leave you with this. This was a photo that was just posted by Dan Scavino. And this is at 10:15 last evening, when Donald Trump and all of his cabinet were escorted back to the White House. And this is just before their press briefing that they had. Here you can see he's flanked by Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, JD Vance, Stephen Miller, and more. And I'll zoom in here just for the sake so that you can see here. Donald Trump is getting briefed as it's happening on some of the security breaks. The person that did this, Wright Cole, ran right through a wide open security checkpoint. And this is Donald Trump getting the latest on Cole. So what's your thoughts on this? We know the progressive left has been marching lockstep with escalation in their rhetoric, calling Donald Trump an enemy of the state and that he's an existential threat. What are we to expect with people that are impressionable like Cole when they hear their leaders saying that Donald Trump's an existential threat? This is what happens when the temperature is raised to that level. And my last question for you in the comments are wide open, so jump in. When have you heard, just give me one example, when have you heard anyone on the right, Donald Trump, JD Vance, Marco Rubio, Stephen Miller, you name it, Hegseth, anyone that's used rhetoric like the left has? Right? When? Just give me one example, because the answer is they haven't. There's been a respect that has taken place in the wording and the verbiage and how we talk about the other side from Donald Trump and his administration, because they know, and if anybody, he knows what happens when you have impressionable people doing abhorrent things. And thank God that everybody, including all of the reporters at the event last night, were safe. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments down below. Our very next story is one that you're not going to want to miss. In this, I break down a battle between a true MAGA patriot, Ken Paxton in Texas, and John Cornyn, a complete uniparty rhino who's the incumbent senator in Texas. Well, John Cornyn just got caught deleting some of his past commercials that he's used in past campaigns. where he talked and looked for a pathway to citizenship and amnesty for people that are in this country illegally. You have to see this. It's coming up next. Have a look.